Hello and welcome back to She's in Focus, the podcast dedicated to inspiring and empowering female filmmakers and videographers from all walks of life and on every step of their creative journey. I'm your host, Kel Grant, an aspiring filmmaker from New Jersey who's just trying to turn my passion into something more and connect with amazing women who have the same passion for video. One of those being Larissa Johnson, a filmmaker currently based in Seattle, Washington, that has formed a husband and wife duo wedding videography business. Her journey doesn't start there, however. Larissa has some interesting backstory in turning her passion into a full-time gig and has a history of courageously taking big chances, like the time her and her husband quit their jobs to travel the world for a year. I cannot wait to uncover this amazing story. Larissa, pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for being here.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me, Kel. I think it's super cool what you're doing with this She's in Focus podcast and kind of empowering women who have decided to take this journey into filmmaking. So I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for saying that. Yeah, I mean, after every episode I have, like, the mission and the drive to continue to do this just gets stronger because, if I had something like this kind of that existed already when I started out, I think it would have been kind of like a nice push in the right direction or some motivation and guidance. So I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah, no problem.
All right. So based on your bio that we talked about a little bit, you learned Premiere Pro from your brother in high school, and then you kind of picked back up with filmmaking again as a passion a few years after that. And then a few more years passed and you were hired at a university. I kind of want to get the timeline straight here. That's the gig that ended up kind of launching you into videography full time. So if you could just talk about how you discovered your passion and how your skills have evolved as the years went on.
Yeah, absolutely. So of course I grew up in the 90s and everyone had big clunky cameras. And I just remember growing up, just always wanting to use it and look at home videos and just being fascinated with filmmaking. I always wanted to be a director when I was older, so I was never really actually interested in the filming side of things, but I guess as I grew older I realized it was kind of a pipe dream, and I graduated high school thinking, oh, I don't know if I could do that, but kind of backing up, in high school I made a lot of videos with my friends and they're really embarrassing. So I did lots
We've
of
all been there.
Yeah. I did lots of scary movie videos and music videos. So those were always really fun to look back on now. But I had my brother, he went to Murray High School in Utah, and he actually had a course that was about filmmaking. And that's where he learned Premiere Pro, and so he had it on the computer and he let me use it and taught me how to edit basic things, and so I was able to kind of learn Premiere that way. So in high school I was bummed out when my high school didn't have a program like that because we didn't go to the same high schools, but it was still really fun to be able to dabble with all those things. I guess the next step from high school was right after high school I went to China, so I taught English, and of course, between all of these things I always just filmed things to capture, document things in my life. I'm trying to think. I have notes here.
So was it when you went to China, what was it that you were doing there? I mean, I'm assuming you didn't go, there was a separate trip later on in your life where you went with your now husband with the idea of okay, we're going to film, we're going to do this for a year, we're going to travel. But this trip was for a job. It was something different, right?
Yeah. So this was just teaching English. And so I was gone for 4 months living in China, but it was kind of more of a voluntary thing. So I wish it was more of a job, but it was just to kind of have experiences in life and stuff, and kind of explore and travel. So that was a really awesome time, was just being in China and learning their culture. So when I got back, I obviously needed a job, and and I got hired at Western Governors University just as a data entry specialist because, I didn't want to go down the college path because I didn't know what I wanted to do. So, which is ironic that a university hired me and I didn't even go to school. But so I was doing data entry at the university, and my manager one day, he was like, "Hey, I know that you've dabbled with some video, and we're looking for somebody to create a tutorial for some students so that they can understand how to do something, and could you make this video for them?" And I was like, "Oh, sure, So I hopped on the camera. It's a very awkward video because I had to be in front of it and explain things to the students. But, looking back at that video now, I think it's like really bad. Because
of course,
I've come a long
we always
way,
look
I feel
back,
like.
right?
Yeah. But he was like, "Oh, this is great. This is awesome. Thanks so much." Another team at the university, the training team, saw that video and they were like, "Oh, this is really great. We need it." It's an online university too, so they're like, "We need more videos and stuff created for our students." And so they had me go onto their team, which I was way more excited about because now I'm not doing data entry, which is kind of boring.
Of course.
But now I get to actually pursue this dream that I've always wanted to do, is to be creative and create videos. So I started doing that at the university, and eventually it got to the point where all these other teams needed videos that were more than just training. A lot of it was, like, let's create a video for the yearly bonus meetings that the whole university gets together for. And it almost got overwhelming because everyone needed a video and it was just me doing all the videos. So the university created their own studio, and they had me obviously create a team, and we hired a bunch of other people to come in and help out, and I became head videographer over there, so it was really cool. They had like the whole like broadcasting setup, so they had a stage and the green screen, all of the equipment. Yeah, it was really, really cool. So
wow. So you said it was an online university, so was this set up like just for you and your team to produce all these videos?
Yeah. So I mean, they had like an actual campus, but students wouldn't go to the campus. It was just for employees, really. But yeah, they created this. Yeah, I know. But they created the studio so that we could start creating more of these videos for people, and for students and also for staff as well. So yeah, it was a really cool opportunity.
Yeah. Where was your head at during this time? Because I mean, it kind of sounds like you fell into this. Like you took an opportunity to create one video because your boss said, "Hey, we kind of need this favor. I know you're interested in video. Can you do this for me?" And then, it caught the attention of a lot of other people. And even then, moving from like the data entry to the videography, I'm sure you were like, "Okay, this is so much better than what I was doing." But did you see it like forming into this full-time like head of videography position? Where was your head at during that time?
Yeah, so I did not see it coming at all. I always just did video as, just for fun. And like I mentioned before, I always thought my pipe dream would be, "Oh, I'm going to be a videographer. I'm going to be a director." That's something I'd always loved to do. But I think I like squashed that idea. And so having all of this kind of just fall into my lap was a really cool experience. I don't think a lot of people get that, but I was happy to be able to follow those doors that opened. And also on the side, I was trying to do real estate because I obviously didn't want to do data entry forever. And, that was something that was really cool too, was to be able to kind of follow that filmmaking journey. And I sucked at real estate, so that was really good too. But yeah, it was awesome, just kind of doing all of that.
Yeah, that's really incredible. And I think what's unique about your story that that I haven't necessarily really touched on the podcast is a lot of the women who I've interviewed have gone to school for like video production and have gone through those formal programs, and they usually end up graduating feeling like they've kind of lacked experience, or they're not where they want to be, or like the DSLR kind of wedding filmmaking and other stuff was not taught in schools. You know, maybe they were taught, you know, a similar program to what your brother had in high school, like a Premiere Pro kind of tutorial of sorts, but not like the kind of hands-on filming experience that you seem to have gotten. So I think I just want to debunk the myth, like right off the bat, that you have to go to college to be able to kind of follow your dreams, and just, I think what it comes down to is just taking opportunities when they present itself. Because could you imagine what your life would be like if you had said like no to when like your boss had told you, oh, like, can you do this video for us, or if you hadn't moved to the training team and done all that, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I can't even imagine it. It's funny how one little thing can happen and it just opens so many doors. But yeah, I feel like it was a really cool experience for me to not have gone to college. Like, I kind of wish I did have a little bit of that college experience, but more for like the social aspect of it all.
Right.
I feel like needing a degree in filmmaking is not something that you need if you want to start your own company. I would say maybe it would be a good idea to possibly do, I don't know anything, but I think it might be possibly good to go get a degree if you were wanting to get into Hollywood, or, you know, things like that. Maybe that's not true. I don't know. But for me, I think that your work shows for itself, and that's the best part about video, is that people can physically see what you're capable of, and you don't need a resume. You don't need to have this fancy degree. You know, people, they believe in you, and that's the best part of it all, because people will follow, they like your work.
Yeah, and it's a testament too, because with such a visual kind of medium that we work with, not only can they see how great you are, but they can see your progress, like plain and simple, right out in the open there. Because if you, for example, if you put one of your videos that you create now next to that first like tutorial training video that you made, I'm sure it's leaps and bounds greater than what you had produced at that time.
Yeah.
Would you say that's true?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, everybody starts at ground zero. I don't know anybody who comes right out of the gate just making a beautiful cinematic piece. You know, you have to learn, you have to start at the bottom, and you grow. That's the best part, is that I'm still improving my skills and, you know, getting better and better every day, every time I edit.
Awesome. So I have to know, because your husband Tyler comes into this kind of as you continue your videography journey to growing your business to what it is now. But how did you and your husband meet?
Yeah, so we actually met on Instagram.
Love that.
So
I love that for you.
He slid into the DMs. But yeah, we started dating, and we met in person, obviously, at some point. We started dating. He also lived in Utah. He grew up in Texas, but he moved to Utah to go to school, which he also dropped out of because he didn't know what he wanted to do in life either. But he was really good in sales. So he had a sales job. And I think that's kind of foreshadowing the future. That's the beautiful part about our team, is that he's very good with the sales part, the marketing part, and I'm really good with the creative part. But kind of rolling back, so we met, and then we got married in 2017. So like 4 years ago. And when we got married, we were like super broke, because most people who are around that time, you know, are. So I really wanted to get into filmmaking more, even on the side. So I didn't have it wasn't my passion to make tutorial videos.
Right.
They're not the most exciting thing, but because I was able to open this door, I started to dabble more into the creativity and the fun of what filmmaking has to offer. So I begged my husband, like, can we please get a camera? Like, I know we don't have a lot of cash right now, I'm trying to save it, but you know, let's really do this. I think I can do this. We can create our own company, and you know, it could be really good. And he's like, I don't know, it's a lot, you know, for one camera. So we settled on the 80D, the Canon 80D, which was my first camera. And we ended up selling his car so that I could get it.
Wow.
And then he bought a bike so he could bike to work. But it was really cool.
It's dedication.
So, yeah, he believed in me, so that was awesome. So I invested in the full-time filmmaker course, which I learned a lot from with doing video. And I started doing weddings on the weekends to kind of jump into that world and, you know, maybe just see how it goes. And
Right.
yeah, it was great. I loved doing it. I loved making couples happy and kind of sharing a story. The way I edited was a little different than it is now with weddings. I did like one song that was 5 minutes long, 3 minutes long, and it was quite boring to watch because it was just highlights. There was no audio. It didn't flow very well, but I was way too focused on capturing flowers than anything else, or food, you know, trying to get that cool shot. But yeah, that kind of, I did that on the side a little bit, so.
So when we first started kind of branching out and developing your skills in that, did you do it with your husband, or were you like finding these wedding gigs alongside an already established videographer? Were you like a second shooter, or were you actually just like jumping into your first wedding solo and just going for it?
Yeah, so I pretty much did everything myself. I think the very first wedding I ever did was for free because I needed to practice and I needed a portfolio. Right. And I was nervous, and so I brought him with me to kind of help me out and, you know, be more moral support, I guess, than anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, most of it in Utah was just me, really. So I would just go solo and go capture these weddings by myself most of the time.
Wow. So at some point in your story, you know, I guess your husband at this point wasn't like going full time, really integrated into the business model yet. Mm-hmm. It was mostly you. Did he end up quitting his sales job and then just jumping full time right into that?
Yeah. So the journey of how he joins my team kind of is backed up a little bit. So that kind of leads into our story of traveling together. And the whole process of that, during this whole time of filming weddings and, you know, doing other things, it was also a way to save more money because we both had a goal that we wanted to travel for a year before we, you know, settled down and, you know, bought a house or had kids or any of that stuff. So right. We were like, hey, you know, this is a great opportunity in our lives right now to go experience the world. So we saved up all of our money and we quit our jobs in December 2019. So I think we all know where this is going.
Little did you know.
Yeah, so we bought a one-way ticket to Japan January, and we stayed about a month in Japan, a couple weeks in Taiwan, a couple weeks in Malaysia, and then we were in Vietnam until COVID started getting really bad. And we're like, you know, it's such a bummer. We really wanted to utilize this time to go travel, but of course, things were really crazy. Yeah. So we ended up coming back, and we went to Texas because that's where his parents were. We were kind of hunkering down until we could maybe see, you know, what was happening with COVID and stuff. And as we all know, that is still here. Speaking of COVID, I have COVID right
The new
now,
normal.
but
No, you don't. Oh my goodness. What a trooper. Just like,
thanks. I'm at the end of it, but yeah, it's crazy. So we went to Texas, and then we tried to find some jobs. You know, we're like, well, you know, if we're here, let's find some work. Let's try to not just sit around, I guess. And so I tried applying to a lot of different companies that were in filmmaking because I wanted to stick with that, and nobody was hiring. You know, obviously, like that was the hype of COVID. Everyone was losing their jobs, and it was crazy. So I was like, well, you know, maybe I'll just start my own company. And during this time, Tyler, my husband, he was applying to some other jobs, and he had another sales job lined up that he was going to start in a couple weeks. And so during those couple weeks, I actually filmed a senior who was graduating and I was telling her story. So she did like a voiceover, and she was wearing her cap and gown and her prom dress because COVID, she couldn't ever, you know, use those things. She couldn't walk. She couldn't, you know, do any of that. So I made this video, and she was able to kind of tell her story and wrap up her high school years and stuff. So it was cute. And it kind of took off, you know, it got really popular, and all these other moms were like, oh, I want that for my daughter, and oh, I want that for my son. And I started doing a lot of those videos, and eventually it kind of snowballed into picking up some corporate clients, and that snowballed into some weddings. And I was having so much work that I needed to bring Tyler onto the team. I was like, hey, do you not want to go to this job and work for me instead? And he's like, yeah, I do actually, you know. So he did a really good job with communicating with a lot of the clients, and it kind of just sprouted from there. It was really cool.
Yeah. Now I just met you virtually a few minutes ago. I don't know your husband, but from what I've heard so far on this podcast, he is very much in support of you and believes in you. So it feels like, you know, when you're deciding to enter into business with somebody, it's a big decision. And they say, like, you know, don't work with family. And I think that also it counts, but like, don't work with your significant other. So was there ever a point during that time where you were like, this might not be a good idea, this might not work out as a business venture? Or were you like no, like it doesn't matter how like I'm not thinking, you know, 5 years ahead in the business right now, I think this is the best decision for me and our kind of financial situation right now?
Right. Yeah. I think you know, we're both big advocates for doing what you like in life, and not necessarily just chasing a dollar bill, because that's not where happiness lies, you know. Which is really hard. Yeah. It's easier said than done, and I know that. But I think he was very supportive in that aspect, and you know, I wanted him to be as happy just as much as I was, you know. And we also worked really well together. Obviously, we are, as far as like our marriage went and like fighting and stuff because we're with each other 24/7. That was not really something I was super concerned with, because we had been with each other 24/7 for those 3 months traveling, and everything was great. And so and things are still really awesome. He's a great partner to the team, and picks up a lot of the slack where I'm not able to touch, and we get a lot of stuff done. So it's really cool.
That's so awesome. And it's funny. I feel like you guys kind of survived a lot of things together, you know, traveling together for months, then the pandemic, you know, you're shut in, you're in lockdown 24/7 together. That was a test for a lot of couples and a lot of relationships. So to come out on the other side of that and be like, yeah, now let's work together. I think you guys are winning on a lot of levels.
Thank you.
Of course. So you started with kind of doing some other projects, some corporate gigs, those really cool kind of high school tribute videos. How and why did you land on transitioning your business to like fully wedding videography?
Yeah. So I think a lot of it was kind of just experimenting what we liked filming the most. And I feel like in the wedding, in the the filmmaking industry, doing weddings is kind of like a cop out. Like, it's the easiest way to make decent money. But at the same time, I found myself really just not liking corporate stuff. I didn't like working with corporate people because a lot of them were very, I guess, just too businessy for me. And I really liked the aspect of weddings, and people are excited to get married. People are excited to, tie the knots, and it's always like a happy day. Yeah. It's always a good happy time. And I also wanted to kind of hone in on one skill and not be kind of all over the place. So it was a really easy decision for me to decide to just go through with weddings, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I love being part of the party, and then I get to go edit something that's cinematic and beautiful, and it's just awesome.
Yeah, and meaningful for sure. Yeah. It's something like with these corporate videos, it's like, if it's truly corporate, like corporation, you're handing this video off and it's gonna like go into the marketing funnel for X amount of months, and then it's like, okay, now we need a different one. And it's usually a different company. There's just like no like personal connection to it, really.
Right. Yeah.
But something like a wedding film, they're gonna look back on that for the rest of their lives, and you've gotten to kind of be part of the lives of so many people. I think that's really cool. Do you find that the thing that like made it exciting for you and ignited your passion about videography in general when you were younger, do you find that the same thing kind of drives you to continue now?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, I think all I wanted to do was capture like moments. And for me, it was capturing my own moments, obviously. So it was, road trips with my cousin, or, right. Things at family functions. But I think for weddings, it's capturing moments for other people, for them to look back on forever. So I think it's something that I really like, is just being able to tell people's stories and capture those really awesome times that people can cherish forever. So
that's really awesome. I think at the start of it, for me, storytelling was the thing that drew me to filmmaking back in high school. And I think over the years, as I went through the college program for video production and stuff, I feel like I lost that. And it became more about, acquiring these skills and doing the projects because I have the skills to be able to complete the assignments. So I was doing, kind of like you did, a lot of tutorial videos. I was doing these corporate style kind of high level, top of the funnel videos. And then I found like on my free time, that's when I was creating like these kind of like story essays, if you will, or like personal vlogs that were cinematic, but they were also like just telling a story, whether that was like a day in the life story of what I did in a day, or like sharing something personal. And now I find myself like going back to that storytelling aspect of it, and I'm wondering, why don't certain aspects of filmmaking appeal to me now? And why do I see those things as just a job? And it's because my real passion is storytelling. And I haven't quite yet made the leap to making that part my career yet. I am very much still in the process of like cranking out these social media videos for these agency clients, cranking out corporate videos just to kind of, keep the income going. But I think kind of going back to the roots of why you started and where your passion really lies, I think like possibilities are endless when you do that. But like you were saying, it is hard. I'm sure you do get to do what you love for a living, but I'm sure that it doesn't come without its challenges. Can you speak to some of those kind of those rough moments or those challenges, especially now that we're still in the midst of a pandemic?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really hard balancing life with passion and work, even though you could argue that my work is my passion, I have so many videos that I have not edited with my personal life because I've been so busy just editing other people's stuff. So it's so hard trying to balance a lot of that. I think for me, that's a struggle of mine. With COVID, you know, luckily we haven't been hit super hard with our wedding industry just because we were in Texas when we did start the company. But then we decided to kind of uproot everything and move to Washington. And by the time we got to Washington, things were starting to open back up again, and you know, people were doing weddings, and so that was kind of a blessing in disguise as well, where you know it all just kind of worked out. So
yeah,
and Texas obviously was very open, so we were able to do lots of weddings and shoots and stuff. But yeah, that was basically my thought on those.
awesome. So we got to take a step back. Why, out of all places that you've been, why Washington? Because it sounds like, you know, your husband Tyler, he was, you know, kind of grew up in the Texas area. You grew up in Utah. Where in the world does Washington come in?
That's a good question. Yeah, it's really funny because I never really went to Washington growing up, or really ever. But I did grow up in Utah. So me personally,
Right.
I was very outdoorsy. I loved hiking and I loved doing road trips and stuff. It was a good central location to go to a lot of different places. Living in Texas for that past year was really hard for me because there is nothing to do outside. Like, if you go outside, you will just burn and die. But, and also, you know, we just like nature and stuff, and everything seems to be man-made, and you know, there's a lot of good parts to Texas too. I don't want to say Texas is the worst place ever, but Washington is just so beautiful. And my family also recently relocated to Washington, so that helps as well to kind of make the move up there. So yeah, that's why we chose Washington. It's just unbelievably beautiful. You are next to the ocean, you're next to the mountains, I just feel like it has everything that we would want in life is here. So it was risky though. You know, we were scared to leave Texas in fear that the company wouldn't do as well, and you know, things would still be really closed down and stuff. And so we were like, well, I don't want to live in Texas forever, so we got to go somewhere. And so that's why we decided to just push through, and we started marketing in Washington while we were in Texas. So luckily we had some things lined up, and by the time we got here, by the time we got here, we were thriving. Like, we did really, really well, and a lot of people wanted to hire us, and so we were pleasantly surprised by that. And it just all seemed to work out again. So we're like, cool, I'm glad that all these things are just working out.
Lining
you know
up. Yeah, truly. But it sounds like even before the pandemic, that it seems like you were a person that kind of like, you know, evaluates, sets a goal, and then just has the courage to kind of go for it. Do you have, like, what's your biggest piece of advice that you can give to someone who's on the precipice of a big decision or wants to go after a big change, but they can't seem to find the courage to kind of do so or to take that leap yet?
Yeah, I feel like it's hard. It's scary because, you know, it is a risk when you make decisions like that. I feel like for me, I've always tried to make those decisions in the smartest way as possible, where if it does flop, at least I'm not like in trouble.
Right.
So I always go for things if I know I have something to fall back on, at least. I'm not going to just totally ruin everything in my life. But I do like to pursue things like that, because the worst, you know, it's like, you know, what's the worst that could happen kind of a thing. And you learn a lot from mistakes, and you know what to do next time to achieve the goal if it doesn't follow through the first time. I don't know. I just am a big advocate in doing what makes you happy in life. And I think you're not going to be able to get to anything if you don't at least try. So that's always what I've just done.
I love that. I think that's really great advice. And the idea that like your decisions, they don't have to be a forever thing. I mean, like that's kind of how I approach just production in general. Like if I have like a big idea that I want to do, but I'm not sure about it, it's just like realizing like kind of in life too, like we get these like first draft attempts, right? Especially in production, like you put out something and then you just kind of get to ideate on it too. Like just like I think that's the same with every other decision in life. Like, okay, you want to up and move. It's not what you thought it was. Okay, like now we get a chance to kind of adapt and iterate on that. Like it doesn't have to be this like this dead end, like end all be all decision. I mean, could it go the opposite way? Sure. But I mean, keeping those kind of barriers in place, like you were saying, of like having something to fall back on, I think is your best bet, but you won't know unless you try it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's it breaks my heart seeing people that don't try and they know they have the potential to.
Yeah.
But I think it's so important in life, like you don't get to stay here forever, and you know, what's the harm in trying? If it goes well, then you get to live and do your dream. And you know, I think there's just a lot to say with taking that risk and going for it.
Absolutely. There's this quote that I feel like it feels like something Steve Jobs would. No, it's something more iconic than Steve Jobs. Someone said like, "Oh, maybe I'm gonna be honest. Maybe it's like a Winnie the Pooh quote. I'm not sure. Winnie the Pooh is more iconic than Steve Jobs. Yeah, I would agree. But it's like there's a quote that's like, "What if I fail?" And it's like, "Oh, but like, what if you fly? What if you succeed?" And I think about that a lot. It's like the missed opportunities lie in that, like just being courageous and just like going after it. Like if you just follow through, you know, what are the possibilities that can open up from that? And I think like it's a win-win, honestly, even if you do fail, quote unquote, because you get to learn from it, like you were saying. So that's like a new jumping off point from wherever you land. So I think that's really interesting.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
I visited your website and I like instantly fell in love with you guys. It's one of those things where like you get a vibe from a couple. And I watched your guys' like intro video and immediately I was like, okay, first of all, they're adorable. They respect each other. Like they work as a team. I like if I'm a bride, they'll take care of everything. They have great chemistry. I'm in, right? And that's like all aside from the great production value of the video and the quality and like the impressive portfolio. I'm actually, it's funny, we just got engaged, my fiance and I, like early
Nice.
December.
Congrats.
And thank you. Yeah, I'm still kind of riding the high. And so one of my another female filmmaker friend, Danielle from the full-time filmmaker group, Danielle Hope Diamond is her name. She's very cool. But she offered to kind of do our wedding video as like a portfolio piece for her. And I was like, of course, we're not going to turn that down. But I showed my fiance Joshua your portfolio and I was like, okay, if this thing with Danielle falls through, we need to fly Larissa and Tyler out here because I just felt like I was watching a movie.
Oh, thank you.
It was just incredible. But I you know, that's like the kind of buttoned up final product. Mm-hmm. And the final product seems so seamless, but I'm assuming that like not all shoot days go that way, or maybe there's more challenges to the edit, you know, before we see the final video. Can you tell me about a time when you thought like, wow, this is going to turn out like crap, or like, oh, this is not going the way we planned, and how you guys kind of saved it together?
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there have been a lot of growing moments in the company. There's a lot of things that Tyler and I had to figure out to work out with each other and trying to figure out, you know, where our strengths and weaknesses were as our own little team.
Right.
And obviously, as we grew the company, we started with 1 camera, 2 cameras, 3 cameras. We have 4 cameras now, where the more cameras you start bringing in, the more you have to figure out how you're going to manage them all with 2 people.
Of course.
And so we got to the point where Tyler is very good at, you know, he's great at miking people up. So he'll go mic people up while I'm capturing certain things. We split off, so he'll go capture the groom and I'll capture the bride. He'll set up lights and do the drone while I'm in there, getting shots of the reception. There's a lot of things like that on the physical day. As far as editing goes, I think a big part of what makes a really good video is mostly just the bride and groom and what they decided to do with their day. So some videos, they'll make it very simple and they won't do very much, and they don't want to have vows and they don't want to, do a lot of things. So it doesn't give me a lot to work with in the editing room. And I think those are maybe the most stressful videos for me to edit, is when I don't have a lot to go off with. But at the end of the day, again, I'm there to capture their wedding day. And if that's what they did, then, that's what they wanted to see. And it still turns out really beautiful. And I think I haven't had any angry brides, at least not that I know of. So it all works out, I think, at the end of the day.
Good. Yeah. No bad reviews. Perfect. Yeah. So what I'm hearing is like the certain benefits of working with your husband is like the splitting up of work, like where you kind of, you guys get to excel at different things, which is really cool. Because Marissa, who was featured on the podcast, she also worked with her husband. But Mitch does the editing and she does the filming. So it's a bit different. I think it's really cool that you guys are both, day of, which is cool. You get to ride to the shoot together. You get to do the pre-production stuff together. You get to film the day. You get to kind of debrief together afterwards, which is, I'm sure you guys like, once you get in the car, you're like, oh, can you believe that? Oh, yeah, I know. Like, you're just like getting to kind of share that moment together. But do you collaboratively work on the edit as well?
Yes. So I've actually, Tyler didn't know anything about editing, and so I had to train him. So I had to teach him from ground zero how to do anything and everything, and he's really come a long way after just like 2 years of learning how to edit. So at this point, I'll still take over the majority of the actual editing. And do all the creativity and all of that fun stuff. But he's able to mitigate a lot of the editing time that it takes me to do a video by sorting through the footage and, finding music for me and doing a lot of things like that that's, maybe not so creative, but really helps me out at the end of the day. So he does help with editing for sure.
That's very helpful. I think like getting to work in shifts too works out, because if you're the one who has to like sort through all the footage and do the whole thing yourself, I think like you don't get to go into it necessarily with such fresh eyes. But if you enter the edit and you already kind of have the clips that are like the best clips earmarked on the side, I think you can kind of go in and focus like, okay, now I'm just here to kind of have fun with the music, put the story together. So I think that probably works out really well for you.
Yeah. It's been so far anyway. So it's been really awesome. Yeah, he helps out a lot. So I'm very grateful for that.
Very cool. So when does it really come together for you with a wedding video? Like, are there these kind of aha moments when you guys are filming, or is it in the pre-production process when you're interviewing the couple? Is it once you pick out the song that's going to go with it? Like, what does your process of crafting the story look like? And when does it, like, is there that moment when you're like, this is going to be like the highlight of the story? You're like, oh, I know, I got a feel for the couple, so now I know like what my vision is for this project.
Yeah, I think definitely. So the day of filming, keeping an eye open for any kind of emotion is definitely what's going to make it into the film. So if there's a first look, and I mean, I obviously always put like first looks and the ceremony and reception in the films, but I definitely highlight any sort of emotion. So if I capture mom crying in the pews, or dad tearing up during a slow dance, those are things that I really love getting, because those are things that people are going to remember on their wedding day. Also, I think I like it when couples decide to do like a wedding, like a couple shoot at some point during their wedding day, and they make time for that because that's what allows me to get those really beautiful cinematic shots of just the couple. And sometimes those turn out just beautifully, and it really wraps up the film to kind of show the love that they have for each other a little bit. And it's always a fun time to get that one-on-one time with the couple. And I really like those shots a lot. I think as far as the editing process goes, the music really, really helps. Sometimes I will find music and I'll try to edit to it and it just is not working, and I have to go find a completely different song, and I'm like, no, this is bad. It doesn't flow well. It's not, I don't think the clients are gonna like it. I don't even like it, so I have to go find another song. And sometimes it takes me a whole day just to find the right song for somebody. But yes, music is a big deal, and I think I like to tell the stories in chronological order, so I'll always start with them getting ready, and then I'll kind of go into the ceremony and then go into the reception. I try to stay away from any shots that are like pictures, like there's always that picture session right after the ceremonies that the photographers will gather the whole families together, and if I use any of those, I'll try to use shots that are a little more, they have more movement, because it's a video, it's not a picture, So I
know exactly what you're talking about too.
Yeah. I try to stay away from the shots in the video because they're going to have plenty of pictures of that. They don't need it in their video. But yeah, I think I really try to focus on the storytelling and kind of just go through their day and the beginning to the end, and it always turns out really well, and I like the way that it just flows together, and I think the clients appreciate it too. It doesn't seem messy, in my opinion, when I do it chronologically, so it just makes sense to the story.
Yeah, the videos, I mean, the ones I've seen on your website were just phenomenal. I've never actually watched so many wedding videos one after the other, because I was like, okay, that's a really great standout one, but like they can't all be this good, and they were all that good. So
oh, thank you.
great job, you guys. Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm curious, are there certain wedding clients or projects that you won't take on for reasons other than you're booked that day?
I don't think so. I really like doing really just any kind of wedding. We just did a Hindu wedding the other day, and it was a 3-day wedding, and it was really cool and unique and different, and I haven't edited it yet, but I'm excited to, because it kind of breaks up the monotony, even though every wedding is different, so I don't necessarily get bored with any wedding. But yeah, I think I would definitely take on really anyone that would want me to, if they're available, obviously, and stuff like that. I have no problem filming any wedding at this point anyway.
That's awesome. That's really, really cool. And I think it also, opens you up to some awesome opportunities. Like you were saying, like the Hindu wedding, when would you have been, I don't know, you don't normally come across kind of the opportunity to film a 3-day wedding and an event of that scale. So that's really cool too. Yeah. You've now transitioned into full-on wedding videographers. Where do you kind of see your business going in 5 years? Do you think you guys are going to stick on that path, or branch out into any other direction?
Yeah, at this point, I feel like we are definitely growing our business, so I can't imagine us not sticking with this for a while, but I also realize that it's not something that I can do when I'm maybe 60.
Right.
Just, it is physically demanding on wedding days, especially to carry all of the equipment and hold a gimbal for so long, and maybe I would see ourselves expanding our team eventually down the road, and maybe even starting a second company doing something wedding related. But as of right now, it's really been focusing on just kind of cultivating our business and expanding kind of our own talents with the way that we film weddings and trying to kind of get our name out there in Washington. So
that sounds great. Are there any exciting projects that you have coming up that you want to plug on the podcast today? It's interesting concept, like plugging a wedding, but I mean, just for the, the filmmakers that listen to this podcast, are there any projects that they can expect to kind of come out on your website or your social media that they can look forward to seeing? Any projects that you're excited about?
Yeah, definitely. Well, like I mentioned before, the Hindu wedding, that's something that I'm excited to start editing and kind of put together. I do have a couple other weddings that I'm currently editing right now, but of course, winter is always kind of the slowest season for weddings, which has been kind of nice, actually. It's been a bit of a crazy summer, so yeah, I think those are probably something that I'll be sharing soon. Is just a couple more weddings, and then that Hindu wedding. And then right back to starting to film more weddings for the new wedding season coming up. So
awesome. Well, we'll keep a lookout. Speaking of that, where can the viewers and listeners of this podcast find you?
Yeah. So I have an Instagram. It's Larissa May Productions. And I believe it's just that. I don't think there's any like underscores or anything. And then I also have my website, larissamayproductions.com. I have a Facebook page as well that people can like or follow, just Larissa May Productions. I believe it's Larissa May Productions, Seattle Wedding Videographer. But yeah, those are like the main handles that I have. I do have a TikTok now too, which is also
you jumped on that train.
Yeah, which is also just Larissa May Productions. But yeah, that's where people can kind of find me and go from there.
Very cool. So what is one thing about your story that you want the people listening to remember?
I think it would just be to go for it. I think it's smart for people to just take the leap of faith and, go for your dream and test it out and figure out a way that you can make that happen. I think a lot of people just get too scared and they decide that it's safe to have that, security blanket and that income. And, again, for me, it's easier for me than maybe for other people because I don't have kids and I don't have all these other things tying me down where I need to have that income immediately. But I think if you could find a way to make it happen, then go for it. I think you got nothing to lose, basically. So
I love that. I love those words of encouragement. My final question for you, Larissa, how can the viewers and listeners of this podcast support you as a filmmaker?
Yeah, I guess they could just probably follow me on Instagram. I like connecting with other filmmakers and getting to know how other people shoot and edit, and I just like learning about people's lives and becoming friends with people too. So yeah, I love the filmmaking community, and I think that we all have something to offer, and I would be happy to be your friend on social media.
I love that. Well, you are, joining the female filmmaker community here, the She's in Focus community. So I'm sure there's going to be a lot of connections you can make there. There's also Katie Payne, one of the featured guests on this podcast. I believe that she is also in Washington.
Awesome.
Might be a different part, but yeah, I'll have to connect you guys after the show. But yeah, it's just so funny. I didn't realize, I guess it's obvious that there are female videographers and filmmakers all over the country and all over the world. But I guess sometimes I just get so confined to my little bubble that I'm like, all of them must live in New York where I am. But no, they're everywhere. So it's really cool that we're continuing to expand our network and our reach. Larissa, it's been so awesome talking to you. Your story is fascinating, and I love the message you kind of lead with of just going after your dreams because you don't know if you don't try. So it's been awesome talking to you. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you so much for having me, Kel. And again, I love that you're doing this podcast. I think it's really awesome and inspiring. So thank you so much for having me.
Of course, and as always, thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye!